I'll go ahead and begin. My name is David Gieslin. I am the president of CEASD, and I will be running our second town hall meeting today. This is an opportunity for everyone to participate. Before I begin, I do want to thank the American School for the Deaf because they have sponsored our Zoom meetings and helped us run through these. So thank you so much to you all for your support. I appreciate it. Thank you also to Barbara for initiating this process and getting us organized so that we can do the town halls and communicating that information to everyone. All the CEASD schools are contributing to this discussion, which is great. Our agenda today is going to be looking through what we have coming the next couple of weeks. Got to get my reading glasses on. Next week, we will cover IEPs and mandatory services. So we'll have a discussion about the different viewpoints and how schools are handling these services and what the best practices are. We will discuss inequality. Excuse my finger. I actually slammed it in the door, basically. So just ignore that as we move along here. And as you jump in, please do go ahead and turn off your video screens. I do like seeing your faces. However, it's just too many boxes on screen and it makes it difficult to view. Thank you. So Fran, do you know how to turn yours off? All right. Great. We will talk about macro forces, how we deal with things beyond our control. After that, we will address athletics. There are a lot of questions in regards to athletics, whether or not we can still run our programs, how that will happen if so. Mental health for our staff members. We've had a great discussion about how that impacts our students, but now we will shift the focus onto how we can support our staff members during this trying time, which is critical. And then what reopening will look like in the fall. So I do want to let you know, June 4th and June 9th, we have talked about those meetings. We've decided to combine those into one meeting instead. We were going to do private schools with residential programs, without residential programs, state schools with residential programs, and state schools without residential programs, those recovery plans, and we decided to just combine that into one meeting and just discuss as that goes along. We will do that June 4th if we are able to cover everything that we should. Hopefully we will. There is one challenge to that. There are many states that have not determined what their plan for the fall will look like. For example, here in Indiana, our state's governor has said that there will be no decision made in regards to education for the fall until July. So basically, he has shut off any question or discussion in regards to that. We're phasing through the reopening at this point. I'm sure many of your states are like that, but it will still be a good opportunity to brainstorm and think about things we can do and keep those on tap for once we have that information about what will happen in the fall. And then we'll have that second town hall meeting in July again to really look at that more closely. So prior to that, we'll just have a discussion with brainstorming, and we can look at what each state is doing and just offer up suggestions. Again, we want to think about the vision for CEASD is to support all of our deaf children and to see them thrive. So we do that through supporting one another and sharing. So that's a wonderful example, and these town halls really support that. June 18th, there will be a final town hall meeting that is looking specifically at the school year. It's the same format as today, just opening up the floor to all of you for discussion. And this opportunity today is for you to talk about also other topics that you would like to see discussed over the upcoming weeks. So we can add those potentially to June or further out into July, but this meeting is for each and every one of you. So there are two questions I'd like to pose to you. I will pose both of the questions just so you have a heads up of what they are, and then I'll go back to the initial question. I would like you to share your thoughts from the discussions that you have participated in over the course of the last several weeks. So we've had discussions about the end of the school year planning for graduation. We've had discussions about student life, communication with families, online instruction, budget and finance, and ESY, and then mental health for students, and also human resources. So all of these topics, I'm curious, I would like to get feedback on how you felt these have gone. And then the next question is looking at the coronavirus situation and the adjustments that we have had to make so suddenly as we've gone along, such as online teaching, etc. Well, what pieces do you think will continue and what pieces do you think will go back to normal? So let's go back to the first question. I'd like to get your reflections, your thoughts on how these Tuesday, Thursday meetings have impacted you, what you've thought about these meetings. I just want to open up the floor to you at this point. Anthony?
I just changed my background so you could see more clearly. I think that the topics have been very relevant to all of our schools and what we're facing and what we need for each area. I think that it's critical, all of those areas that have been impacted for our students, which is what we're focusing on ultimately. I know that for us, we have a pretty small school, and in Rochester, we've had to move some staff around, and HR has played a huge role in that. The superintendent and the CEO, we have worked together to be able to assign principals to different tasks and to reassign employees. We've done workshops on Fridays. I've been meeting with my directors, and for the first 15 minutes of that meeting, we have talked about these CEASD sessions and what I've taken away from them. And there have been a lot of positive comments that have come from those, where we've been able to discuss what some other schools are doing, some topics we'd like to know a little bit more about, and we can see how different schools are doing things differently. But it's not a one size fits all. So looking at our leadership team, and it all depends on state requirements. Some schools are charter schools and they have different requirements, but it's been really nice to be able to see what each of these schools are doing, and then to be able to pick and choose some of those things that are helpful to incorporate into our school, like talking about the end of year and graduation, having an online platform to be able to do that. That was something that I had taken away from it. And so I'm looking forward to summer school now. I know our New York governor had said that summer school would be completely online. He just recently announced that today. So with that information, what I took away from this town hall was very important, because it was able to help us to look at what services we could offer, how to best support our students and staff. And it's not, there was never a moment where I didn't feel like where I was taking away from it is vital. Looking at our dorm, we don't want them to feel left out. And I think that it's been great that you've given some ideas about how to use the student life departments to reach out to families and to students and to be involved in important ways. So I want to thank CEASD again for this great opportunity to be able to learn from one another.
Yes, thank you so much for pointing that out. It is a challenge. I know that we've had two separate rooms and sometimes you can't join both of those sessions. So I will keep that in mind, and maybe moving forward, we'll need to stick with one topic and one space for that. Any other comments that would like to be added from anyone else? What you've taken away from all of these?
Yeah, I was going to comment about having the 2 rooms as well, but if we have just the one, I think that that would take us a lot longer. We might be extending them out until July. And so I know that is hard to be able to plan strategically for those 2 different rooms and meetings. I know that what we've done is I attend one and another director attends another. And I know that that doesn't always work, but also having it on record for having the web content available that the schools are able to go back and watch if they're attending the other one and they miss it. I think that that is helpful. Or if they have a person that they noticed they had a really nice comment on that they wanted to find more information, then they could contact them directly. And it is nice to see what other schools are doing that is similar to us. And I do think that it is helpful for us to move along in this situation. Maybe some of the topics will be able to be moved to July. We could do a single session, maybe even August before the beginning of school. So there are several things that we have to discuss, but like you said, some of that information is not yet available. And so we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Oh, shoot. Mm-mm. Yes, and Barbara just mentioned they are recording these, so I will have to look back at those when I have time. Of course, I'll have to find the time because I have a whole list of things on my to-do list, but they are recorded and they are there for us and available for our access if we have the time. So thank you for recording that. I just wanted to mention that. I appreciate it. And yes, with CEASD, the website, we do have a whole host of coronavirus information and resources. I am going to take a moment and show you that, and then I will turn it over to Claire to continue. So as you can see, I've shared my screen. You can see the resources that are available. Everything you need is there. It is a great resource for each and every one of you. And again, thank you to Barbara for coordinating and making sure that is all there. They're excellent resources. If there are any additional resources that you know of, please pass that on to me. I can share them with Barbara and make sure they get added to our website. Okay, Claire.
Yes, I know that I wanted to repeat a little bit about what has already been commented on. I think that it is a really cool thing that there are so many people from various states that are connecting with one another. That in itself keeps everyone from being separated during the coronavirus. And my staff have really enjoyed listening in on what other deaf schools are doing and being able to share several positive comments from their peers and from other staff. And I know that we CSD leaders, we have learned an important lesson from this. And I think that we can probably try to do more of this kind of networking for our members in the future. So I can't say enough positively about what has happened.
Claire, I think you've already responded basically to number 2. And the second question was, what are the new changes and things that we need to continue? So that is probably one of them, to continue town hall meetings from time to time and not wait for the CEASD conference to come together, but having these types of meetings prior to CEASD, maybe a new tradition, etc. So thank you, I guess, to the coronavirus with all its negative impacts, but this is a silver lining that we can take away from it. Any other things that you want to share? Any thoughts about your experiences thus far?
Looking at the director's minutes from the meeting, one recommendation, I know that many of my principals and directors from different schools. Their names are there at the bottom, but it would be nice to have what school they're representing. Like, if I see a name, I might not recognize which school they're from. So maybe if we could identify our school with our name, so we'll have that to know which state they're coming from. So that's just one recommendation from me to help us to know what school people are coming from.
Yes, that's an absolutely wonderful recommendation. And we will add that to our Zoom guidelines, that not only do you list your name, but the school that you are affiliated with. I think that'd be a very nice touch. Anytime we have done other Zoom meetings, IEP meetings, et cetera, it is useful to have those titles and et cetera. So thank you for that. Anything else? Amy?
Yes, I just wanted to agree with some of the other comments that I've heard. For us being a small school, sending some of our staff to go to different conferences is sometimes difficult. And participating in this, the information that they're able to bring to the team discussions is really nice. And oftentimes during conferences, I'm not able to bring them to be able to meet others during the conference. So I'm very much looking forward to CEASD continuing these town halls in the future. I think too that I don't want this to be a replacement for the conference because I very much enjoy the conferences, but I do see the value in having both. So that's all.
Amy, that's fantastic. And basically, when we do this, we're creating leaders out of everyone. You know, these individuals are already leaders within their schools, but it's, if you think about a flock of birds and how they transition through that lineup as they fly and travel through the sky, they do have leaders that move and change positions. So this does give that opportunity to teachers or teachers' aides to get a sneak peek, listen in, and get more leadership skills from this. So thank you for sharing that.
Because I can hear myself, that goes me off.
Okay, are there any other new traditions that you have garnered from these meetings that you will start to use in your own schools? I can think of one personally. So I will start and then I'll turn it over to Jeff. Teaching ASL classes to our parents, I don't feel is a forte that we have had up to this point. So getting dorm staff involved and using Zoom is really giving us the opportunity to offer more ASL classes to our parents, and even with their children standing right by there. So these families that have kids in the dorms are getting that opportunity to take advantage of this resource. So I think that is something that we will continue. It also is helping our parents because they're understanding how to use the technology, and it's going to increase their fluency in ASL. Jeff?
Yes, I just thought that I might be able to pose a question to the group about what struggles you have had and what has helped and what CEASD can do for each school individually to help to navigate the changes that they're experiencing right now.
Well, gosh, thinking about both of these comments, for me, I recognize that we are going to continue to do webinars for our family. We do workshops, and the turnout is typically very small. It's difficult to schedule. It's hard to navigate around children's sports schedules, etc. So doing webinars, we've had more families able to get access to the information. We've also been able to record those. So we have decided that that is a piece we will continue on moving forward. It gives us the ability to reach out to families in another way. As to what Jeff said, for us, our state is already pushing for for us to look at a recovery plan or a restart plan. I've already had to I have to submit it by June 1st to our board. And it's like, oh my goodness. So I am struggling with that. We've got recovery guidelines. And with CEASD, if you could include a link to all the other states, their recovery plans that they are developing, I think it would be great, a great resource for us to be able to review that and refer to that. It would be a great resource. And restart plans, I know everyone, it's different from each school and your location, but we will be going ahead with what information we have currently. And again, that could be changing by August, but if you could do something like that, I think that would be great.
If you look on our website now, California and
I saw Missouri.
Maryland, on
They've
their
sent those.
websites, those were just posted today. It is in draft stage, so I can share that as well to post on the CEASD website. Maybe we can have that in different categories, one separate for recovery, one for summer school, and then one for the fall. Maybe Barbara can add that to the website.
That'd be perfect. If you can maybe send out a link to that in the town hall news, I think that would be nice so that when we are reading up on that, we can click that link.
Sure. I'm not sure if Barbara, are you watching? Are you ready to get to work on that? I've really enjoyed your comments, everyone, for the website on that list. We are planning to have those different categories. Sometimes that can be difficult though, because different states share general information about summer school or a more broader category. So having some of those different categories is something that I will continue to work on adding to the website.
Okay, so a question just came up, and please feel free to bring those up. I just thought of this. Have any of the schools out there had to deal with your state budget agency asking for a reversion of funds, which is not actually a cut of funds, but actually just for you to return some of your funds and proceed as with business as usual, just less 5 or 10% for this current budget? I did already receive that probably about 2 hours ago, a request for reversion. So I'm curious as to if any of the other schools are facing that request.
I have heard that there will not be any budget changes made here until August 15th. So I won't know what my budget is until August 15th. What that will look like, I honestly have no idea. The state has not even given us a hint. So I'm like I'm a sitting duck right now, waiting to see. I know that there was one article in the paper this morning about Michigan closing every Friday, that was an order, and how to be able to meet IEP goals is another issue because you have to have a certain number of days in the IEP. So I don't know if that means that they will have to extend the school year or what that will look like. So I'm keeping an eye out on Michigan now because I think that we will see similar situations in other states.
Yes, that's going to be interesting to see what they decide after March with the budget. And with those changes, will that, as you mentioned, impact the IEP, et cetera? We do have to do a 15% reversion, and it is due June 8th. I've got to hand that over by June 8th. I'm not really sure how I can even get that plan together by June 8th. So I feel the same. I don't know what our school is going to look like in the fall. I mean, already because of this. So you've got to laugh. So Claire?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that just yesterday, we received notice of a mandatory 50% reduction, a 5% reduction that we have to meet. So I'm writing a complaint, an appeal to the governor's office, but it typically happens that it will fall on deaf ears. I don't know.
That's right. All you can do is document so that you show that you did try to appeal that. It's important. Anyone else who'd like to add a comment? So in New York, prior to the coronavirus outbreak, it was April 1st when they announced that all deaf schools are under 4201, that association in New York, that their budget is going to stagnate. They are not going to get any increase in their budget. That was already announced. So New York is astronomical in costs, et cetera. So the governor has already given us a heads up that there is the possibility for a 20% cut in education, 20% in the local government, 20% cuts in medical, so hospital services, unless there is federal funding supplied. So, I think it's going to turn out to be a he said, she said thing. We're going to be looking at each entity trying to figure out what will happen. But there are 3 areas that we are going to have to focus on based on that stagnated budget, those cuts in education and medical. When we're looking at planning, 20% is an astronomical impact, obviously. I will manage, but Jeff, you're right. It's a waiting game, and the governor will decide, at some point in the future how that's going to play out. They have a legal authority to determine the budget on a quarterly basis at this point. So it may be 5%, then in August, they may change it to 10%. So I really am not sure how we are supposed to work with that and how we are match the quality of services that we need to supply to our students with an ever-changing budget in this way. And they can notify us at a moment's notice. So it is a challenge for New York.
Was I on mute that whole time?
I don't think so. No, we are not receiving that.
We have received some funding from CARES, but it is a very small amount in comparison. I am glad that some others shared comments because that gives me some relief. I know that our cuts are 12%. And when I heard that, I was very upset because our budget, again, is due by June 30th. And thinking about how we can plan for the fall when we don't even know what it looks like or what our budget will look like. So it seems as though many of you are going through the same thing. We did receive the CARE funding, but they said that that will be spread amongst all the schools. So I anticipate that it will be a small amount, not equivalent to the cuts that we'll be receiving. Hopefully there will be more coming though.
I'm sure some of you as state schools, you've had this experience when the state makes a determination. They look at you as an agency, and then in another moment, they view you as a school, just whatever works to their benefit. I'm sure you've had that experience. Are we getting any giggles or any comments that anyone would like to share on that statement? Are there any discussions or topics that you would like to see us bring to the table for future town hall meetings?
I'm going to use the interpreter. We're in a kind of an odd boat, obviously also from New York. There is money left over this year because there's been no one on the campus. We've had, okay, downstate, a warm winter. So the fuel, things like that, we've been out of school obviously over 2 months now and so on. And now the expectation is, according to governor, we'll be out all the way through August. If there is money left over between now and June 30th, when our funding ends, should we be quickly spending it because it will get cut? There's no doubt in my mind as of July 1st. So it's kind of like a conundrum. I can't give a raise because it may not be there next year. The state will frown upon me if I start buying 500 new computers, though if nothing else, COVID has taught me every single child needs to have a computer at their home from my infants up, because parents are working on iPhones to try and help their children. So it comes down to money will be cut. You know, the state is in dire straits, or will be in dire straits unless the feds bail us. But there is funding now. Do you spend it in hope, or you spend it and realize you're stupid? It goes back and forth. You want to help everybody. You want to make sure you use your money because the state will cut it back. But to use it and then know you're going to lose it, I don't know how you play that game. It's really a balance game. And that's what we're trying to figure out now with the finance people, my principal, and so on. Not sure.
And to answer that Fran's question, maybe what needs to be considered is really the cost of opening school itself. There are going to be additional costs, face masks, temperature readers, that whole process. Is that going to impact staff? What will the programs look like? Will programming have to change? And what are the additional costs associated with that as well? So if there is funding left, do you use that funding to make those purchases towards that? And then those supplies are probably already gone as it is. So it really is a challenge. And I'm sure some of you have been facing, as we mentioned, these budgetary cuts. How do we provide a safe environment for student learning and for our staff and even parents as they visit campus? So this may be a good topic for discussion for a future meeting, how to address the cost of this new environment that we may be facing. Would anyone else like to reply to Fran at this time? Jeff, did you want to add a topic for discussion? Again, the floor is open to all of you. If you haven't been able to make a comment up to this point, please do jump in. We do want to hear from you. We're each and every one of us learning from each other. Russell? Russell's coming.
Hi, sorry about that. My son is sick, and so I'm a little bit distracted. Talking about the 4201 schools in New York, I know that there are 11 state schools or schools around the state, and looking at the state and at the city. So I'm in Lexington, New York, and they're talking about the funding being depleted, but how New York will be able to decide on the funding that will be used and for instruction will have huge impacts, and those decisions can't be made without the governor's input. Just 2 days ago, New York City had decided to go ahead and have distance learning for summer school, and so we're waiting for his announcements. I know that Amy had mentioned earlier about that being a challenge. Not just for us, but for all schools. Different school districts have funding that is handled within their district, but we're relying on the governor's decisions. And so we want to be the first ones out of the gate. I know that that's a challenge for many of my people, looking at how to handle this with families who we have 28 home languages within our school system, and being able to communicate with those families is a very different experience. This is my first year as superintendent here at Lexington, so it has been challenging, also looking at the budget, that 20%, and what that will end up looking like, how that will impact services, and trying to look at IDEA and what we have to provide to be in compliance, and looking at my people and those positions. It really is scary and challenging. Also being able to look at teleservices, I think that that's something that we will continue even after the coronavirus has been resolved, because it has become evident that it has been beneficial for our families, and especially for those that don't have access to transportation to be able to receive counseling or other services. So I do foresee that the telehealth will continue.
That's an excellent point. Teleservices, it's true. You're right. For example, my wife is an SLP. She is a speech therapist. And she's talked with people in that field. The state of Indiana has recognized the value of teleservices for individuals out in rural communities, and that those services provided have increased dramatically, and that is something they need to consider as a continued service to be able to offer to those rural services, especially for those families that use ASL and need speech therapy. So teleservices really are empowering the families to reinforce their children and help develop those skills that they need, and not just relying on those specialists to provide those services, but supporting the families so that they can support their children at home. So obviously, in these instances, our specialists have not been able to do direct instruction, but they are doing teleservice, which allows them to educate the families, and then those families are in turn able to support their children. So anyone else want to chime in? Janet, any of you out there?
One other thing that I felt like was worth mentioning is that when we're looking at these cuts, part of that can be political movement for them to keep their status. The federal government will then need to step in to do maybe a 5th or 6th phase to the recovery process to be able to cover some of those state cuts. I know that it's very difficult for us to predict what will happen with the federal CARES funding that is being dispersed to different states. Also looking at private schools, because they're not able to receive that public funding. And so they have to then submit reimbursement costs to the local districts. And so that gets passed on. But talking with different states that have separate funding to be able to cover whatever those cuts may be, that's another discussion that needs to be had with local government officials, but that's probably for another time.
Related to what Jeff just talked about, the politics behind all of this, we all know that Congress has offered up this $3 trillion to support education, et cetera, and Senate has declined that. It will be an interesting political climate in the upcoming years with the election on the horizon. Historically, as we near elections, that's when there is this drop of huge funds to impact the voters. So it'll be interesting to see if this will actually happen. Historically, it has. So I know that things are so in flux right now, but as we get close to elections, they really may be rolling out the dollars. So it may be a game that we're playing this year. And unfortunately, those that will suffer will be our students as they go through this process, because we will be doing the planning, trying to take care of this, but politics will actually be a barrier to us planning and doing what we need to do. Russell, thank you. If you'd like to go ahead and comment and add to that.
I was just going to add one comment that might not really be an impact, but thinking about how things are happening here in New York City, I know our directors are talking about in the last 8 weeks that families are going upstate or they're actually leaving the state of New York. So looking at how that will impact our enrollment numbers for Lexington in particular, we have 280 students. So we could potentially see a drop in enrollments for the upcoming year, depending upon what the governor's decisions are for the upcoming school year. So I see that as being an impact because many people are in fear because they seem to be at the epicenter of the pandemic. And so thinking about how that will spread and looking at the numbers, and I'm constantly looking to see if we'll be able to predict how it will potentially impact us in the fall.
Russell, that's a great point. That really also draws me to thinking about the precedent that is being created through this. And not only that, but our dorm students, as they have gone home to their families and they are accessing things online, will families start to think about the fact that they've seen improvement in their own personal language use with their children, and then they may determine that they want their children to stay home? Or will they, it will just encourage us to broaden our programming to families that are living far away and using those online services. It really does make me think about what the actual implications could be moving forward. Any other comments? Hi, Denise, go ahead.
Yes, related to that, we just set up today a survey that was sent out to our parents with several different questions that were scaled 0 to 10 about how comfortable are you with your student coming back to school in the fall? Would you be willing to have your student to wear a mask? Those types of questions that we pose to our parents just to get a feel. And what kind of impact that will have on our decision is yet to be seen, but we want to know what their thinking is at this point for the parents and their willingness to send their children and what would impact their willingness. Some of them that are hearing that maybe would go to a mainstream program instead, or to continue. Let's say if they went back to the public school full-time, or if they wanted to send them back to the deaf school. If for some of our students who had split placement, would they be willing to send their student just to the deaf school if the public school were closed? So we will wait to see what the results are from that survey. If you'd like, I can share that.
Oh, absolutely. We would love to see a copy of that survey if you wouldn't mind, because I think that helps all of our students in all of the schools.
Sure.
Thank you, Denise. So, are you all ready for the levity? A little levity here. Here you go. Love you all. Yes, you're right. These face masks, those are user-friendly for sure.
You need to put a heart on there.
We did have a discussion with my team yesterday about what the best practices are for interacting with our students and staff. The masks obviously are not deaf-friendly, but those face shields do allow for clear communication via ASL. So is there the discussion that we still need masks on top of the face shields? You know, how much safety do we need to use to keep it deaf friendly? I think that is a question that we definitely need to discuss. And staff willingness. Are there any comments out there about that?
There seems to be much debate. I work very closely with our local public health agency, and I reached out to them about the guidelines for masks, if there were clear masks to be culturally appropriate and to give accessibility. And they said no, that the CDC is standing by our need to be accountable, and that anything that would be distributed have to be CDC compliant. So there's discussion about communication, and they said that safety is the priority. It seems that there's no flexibility here in my local area, even though there are other areas that are a little bit more flexible. So that's what I'm hearing from my state.
You're right. Working with the state of Connecticut, there's been a lot of pressure from the hard of hearing community about this discussion. The big issue is with those clear face masks, they do work fine, but they're acoustically, for those who depend on hearing, they still can't hear through those clear masks because of the way the speech sounds try to travel through there. So there was more discussion. It seems there is one company called the Clear Mask Company. They seem to meet the needs. They've developed a new mask. So here in Connecticut, they've been working directly with them, and I just received an email from them. They have 1,300 masks, and that will cost me almost $4,000 for those masks. They are not CDC approved. However, the FDA has approved them for use if there are no other masks available. So, you know, I don't know how that will work.
But with those clear masks, originally the purpose was for communication, not for safety purposes. It was just for communication. Now they're saying that the masks have to be for the sake of safety, and how their focus is primarily on safety and how we can find something that would be compatible.
Yes, I contacted Clear Mask myself yesterday, and they are already out of masks, and I asked for a sample to see if I could get one to see what the feel and everything looked like, and they said there were absolutely none left. You can do a bulk order of 10,000 or more, and I was thinking 10,000 or more, that's outlandish.
Maybe somebody could order them and we can split them.
Yes, you can order 6,000 for $16,000. So maybe we could bulk order and share them amongst the schools. Now this is David. I don't think that's a bad idea. Yes, we've got to use that collectivity as a group and you bank on that. So we do have a small population. When you think about each of our schools independently, we are very small. It would be hard to get to that number.
Maybe they could bill each of the schools. I'm looking at the prices now. We could potentially order them and split the cost and then bill the school if there are any other schools interested. Maybe Barbara, if you could send out an email to see who would be interested and how many we would need, then it might be worth ordering those in bulk and sharing them amongst the schools.
Thank you for addressing that topic. I appreciate it. Anyone else have something they'd like to add? I want to make sure that I've touched on all of these topics. Oh, there is one last topic. Barbara is going to be making a template to send to all of the schools. And she is doing that because everyone has done such a great job with online learning. It seems we are doing really considerably better than most public schools, which is great public relations for us. But to do so, we have to have your stories. So Barbara may be sending out something. If you could send maybe a one-page snapshot of what you've been doing once this event took place and how you addressed it, something brief that you could send in. Barbara, if you would like to address what that template's going to look like so that they can start thinking about that, then she can use that for PR for our organizations. Go ahead, Barbara.
Sure, it's really very simple. I would just like to see a single page for each school about different stories for your school's struggles. Really, our schools have really skyrocketed, and we want to share those shining moments. Take an opportunity to brag about what we've been able to do. So if you could just, I will send out a link that has a form, and I will ask for maybe pictures of your school, or if you could share a short paragraph about your school, what you were doing before, what your daily services looked like, campus relations, clubs, etc. And then after the virus happened, then how your school responded and how you were able to set up a new system to maintain those relationships, how the school was able to improve those kinds of things. And then a look ahead, what you are expecting. Like online ASL classes, like you mentioned before. Before, those weren't as easily offered, and now we're seeing more of that. We want to talk about that kind of thing, the online therapies, those kinds of things. We really want to demonstrate how much our school has been able to provide a value, and then to be able to share that for I want to be able to collect those stories for each of the schools and then to be able to share them online.
Thank you, Barbara. Any other last comments? Because if not, I'm ready to close. Yes, Barbara? We did the same thing. We got stories, we gathered stories from our families. And I believe we've posted some of those from the parent perspective on social media. Because obviously the public schools, their participation rate has been 60 to 70%. And students with disability out in those more rural areas has been at 27% because they don't have full access to their education. So they do have statistics about that. So I have gathered testimonials from these families, and it has had some real impact. We've had people reaching out to us, wow, you've been able to provide full access to your students. So I was able to expound upon that. So we did that for our Facebook account. And of course we add, I will ask permission to make sure I can share that with CEASD.
Yeah, so that gives you an idea. But if you can add a paragraph about parents too, so thank you for that input. I could add that to the form.
Claire, would you mind expanding on, you talked about alpha something, I'm not really sure, alpha graphics. Do you want to go on with that? Yeah, sure. I will just do that briefly. The name of the company that produces those clear masks, and I've got several examples I can give you. So this is one of them. You know, obviously it's with a hat. I mean, the cost was a little astronomical. Here's another one. This one's more simple. And obviously your signing space is okay, but you can hit the shield in some ways. But it does fully cover your face.
Sam's Club is selling these. They're 4 for $5.
Yes, this was considerably higher than that.
Yeah. And it looks about the same. Yeah, 4 for $5 from Sam's Club. And when I put it on, I hope that Jeff will send me a heart for mine too.
Here it is. Okay, thank you to all of you for participating in this town hall. Your comments are extremely valuable. And so if you've forgotten any of the information from today, you can look on our website and watch the recording of this. There will also be a transcript available, so you can peruse that at your leisure. Thanks again. Stay healthy, stay safe, and that's it. Yes, let's have everybody turn your videos on real quickly to sign off. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.